and welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. And we are back with the Toffee Blues podcast. As you can see, no Max, who I'm usually joined with this for this week, but instead we have a stalwart of the Toffee Blues channel in Paul McAllister instead. So, how are you doing, Paul?
I'm okay, mate. You'll have to make do with me. Stressful times at the moment. I've got a lot going on. Moving out some of the family home. One or two health issues, nothing serious, and just very busy with work. And even if my life was all, jelly beans and roses, supporting Everton just adds a whole layer of stress onto it, doesn't it? So, yeah, but no, as good as I can reasonably expect. Are you okay?
Yeah, doing good, mate. As you said, obviously, Everton's always there, lurking in the background, really, isn't it? But yeah, like I say,
Yeah,
we're
like a big shadow. Yeah.
absolutely, and yeah, just trying to, still trying to see the positives as much as I can. Like I say, I think I'm quite a positive person when it comes to Everton, a lot more than most probably are. But yeah, it's getting more and more difficult, isn't it, at the moment? But I'm sure we'll dive into all of that in this podcast going forward. So yeah, obviously, like I say, so we're coming off the back of another international break. It's been over a week since Everton were last in action. Not the most positive of results down at West Ham. Probably, fell a little bit below expectations, didn't it? Really, and yeah, I think it's right at the end of this run of fixtures we had that I think probably a lot of us expected us to get quite a bit more out of. And it's kind of one of them where you can kind of look at it in some ways, and that, there's only one defeat in our last seven, but there's still only two wins, and we need to be winning more games. I think that's I don't think anyone can really dispute that fact. So yeah, like would you say, would you expected us to have had more points at this point by this stage in the season, do you think?
It's hard to expect things with Everton, isn't it? Well, positive things anyway. But I'd say we absolutely should have more points. We've played well enough, I think, in enough games to have more points. And the fact that we haven't got more points than what we do is largely the manager's fault. But it's also, just a bit of bad luck as well. And it just seems like Everton, the only luck Everton ever get is bad luck. So, yeah, what are we on 10? I think Everton could very easily be on 16 or 17, and we probably should be on 16 or 17. We should have won more than just two games, absolutely. And there's a couple of games that we should have at least got draws in. I'm thinking of games like Aston Villa and Bournemouth. If not win them, then absolutely not lose them. So yeah, I'm rather disappointed with the start of the season, especially when you consider what the run of fixtures was, and I'm quite nervous now considering what fixtures are coming up over December and January, and way Everton are going at the moment, and the way the manager's setting them up, you'd be very hard pushed to see us winning many of these, if any of these games against the top teams, all the teams that are at the top of the table, at least at the moment, they're in form. So you're just hoping that we'll pull a mad result or two out of somewhere, because we seem to pull really horrible results out from nowhere all the time. Can we not pull a good result for once? So I am very worried. I don't think it's quite as worrying as it was under Frank Lampard a couple of years ago before the World Cup break, where I think that was we played those two games with Bournemouth back to back, didn't we, before the World Cup? And it just seemed like everyone was in meltdown and the club was in chaos, and we needed that break to come when it did. Whereas this time, I would have preferred this international break to just get scrapped and let us go on to the next game straight after West Ham. So yeah, I am worried. I'm not quite panicking, but it's we looking at the table doesn't make for pretty reading.
No, I completely agree. And like I say, I was kind of in a bit of a zen state, I'd say, last season. I don't think there was any point last season where I was like really worried we'd go down. And I'm like you, really. I'm still not anywhere near that point really where I'm like truly panicking. But I think back to this point last season where, like I say, I think, we were getting the 1 year ago post a few days ago about the points deduction. And so that was about this time last year. And it was about this time where things really started to like click into gear for us. And it was one of them where at the start of the season we hadn't started amazingly well and the results weren't going great, but the performance levels were there pretty consistently, and it did almost seem that there was quite a lot of bad luck really, and it was mostly down to lack of confidence in front of goal, and we just weren't scoring enough, but we were still creating the chances, and it almost kind of felt like that dam was going to break, and eventually it did in the kind of early December period, and we got a few wins together, and that basically put us safe really in the event of things. I think there was a stat that like if we hadn't gained a single point after like December, we still would have stayed up just based on how poorly Luton did last season. And obviously this year it's a very different situation, I'd say. I think, there's been a few games where, as you say, I think we probably should have got a lot more than we have out of it. And then there's been other games where we haven't played very well and, still managed to get something. I think about Fulham, probably the worst we played all season, and yet we still got a point out of it. So I say there's part of me that still thinks these things will almost like even themselves out over the season. But as you say, with the fixtures we have in December, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. And with the new owners on the horizon, I almost think he's going to run out of time. Based on you look at what's going on at Roma and just how quickly they're churning through managers at the moment, they don't strike me as particularly patient owners who, um, and I think that that could well be to Dyche's cost, and it almost is like he's up against a clock of when the takeover goes through. Really, I think the prospective date was meant to be sometime in December or even January, and if we're in the bottom three, having like lost our last few games, which it could very easily be based on the fixtures we have in December, I think it could very well be that he's out the door. In your personal view, are you still on the side of Daichi, or like whereabouts are you on that kind of spectrum of things? What would you be doing?
Um, I I think sacking Dyche before his contract runs out. I think if we just got rid of him now or at some time before the season ends, I see little point in that really. I mean, because what manager's going to come in for the final 4 or 5 months of the season and definitely do better than Dyche? I can think of only one who I put my money on, and that's David Moyes. Now, I'm not a massive David Moyes fan. Um, but I do think if David Moyes with this squad of players would get more out of it than Sean Dyche is managing, purely because I think while there's similar types of managers, they're both pragmatists and organisers. I do think David Moyes has proved consistently over his career that he's a better manager than Sean Dyche. But if David Moyes was going to come in, then I think he would have already been here by now. So during that last international break after the Bournemouth debacle, I think if anyone was good, if they were going to get him into the club, then I think the phone call would have been made then. So I can only assume David Moyes is just not what the new owners are looking for, and he's not someone who Bashiri's interested in doing business with. Um, I definitely don't want Sean Dyche giving a new deal. Let's say even if we hit a little run of form again and we get away completely away from the relegation zone, I still don't think Sean Dyche is anywhere close to meriting getting an extension on his deal. He'd have to do something extraordinary in this for over the rest of the season. He'd have to get us, close to 50 points more. Sean Dyche, I think, has served a purpose at Everton now, and that purpose was to come in when we were on our backsides. We'd hit rock bottom essentially. I think where we even bottom of the table when he came in and his first game against Arsenal, where we won the Tarkowski header. I think we were either when we sacked Lampard, I think we were either bottom of the table or 19th. So it just felt like Everton couldn't sink any lower. And Dyche was the right type of manager to come in, just a no-nonsense pragmatist and organiser who'd take us back to basics, and he'd throw out a couple of fancy players who flattered to deceive, and he'd just, be a bit old school and backs against the wall type of mentality. And there's a place for that. I wouldn't be against having a manager who's of that ilk in the future. I just think Sean Dyche has shown that he's very limited tactically. And Everton are only ever going to get to a certain level under Sean Dyche, and that is probably around 40 points, which is good enough to stay up, but it's not good enough to get in the top. It's not good enough to get in the top half of the table or close, really, and it's probably not even good enough to be well away from relegation. Because I think even the worst, even it seems that it's the relegation sides. They all don't tend to be as close now. The relegation battles used to be a lot more open than they are now. There always seems like in the last few years there's just two absolute no hopers who go down, and there's one club that's probably down by about April. There's another club that's down by late April, early May, and then maybe there's one team that takes it to the final day. Obviously, it was Luton last year, and it was Leicester the year before that, and so on, so on. It just feels like the teams that go down now probably go down with 34 points, maybe. So even if if you don't get to 40, you're finishing on 37, 38, you could probably stay up. And even if you get in the low 40s, you're still 15th, 16th, you're still right down there. And you're having a very, very uncomfortable finish to the season. So I just think Sean Dyche has got a place in football. He's probably got a place in the Premier League. But Everton are ready to move on from that. So as when these new owners come in, Everton don't want to be in any more relegation battles. Everton don't want to be always just looking to get to 40 points and then we take a breath. We don't want to be just not ever dreaming of going back into Europe or not ever going to big away teams and thinking that we've got a chance of winning here rather than just, oh, let's just batten down the hatches and hope that we can survive. We're just ready to move on from Sean Dyche, I think. And I think he'd probably be happier moving on to another club. He'll never say that publicly, but I think Sean Dyche is not. I think Sean Dyche doesn't get Evertonians, and Evertonians don't get Sean Dyche. I think it's just a manager convenience at this point. And if Everton did tell Sean Dyche at the end of the season, look, you know what we're looking for going forward, I don't think he'd be too upset, really, because I think he'll back himself to get another job with another club, and he'll probably form better relationships there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, with everything you said there, really, to be honest. I think it's I completely agree that for the situation we're in at the moment, I don't really think there was too much better we could have done. I think it was precisely what we needed during that season where everything had gone to shit under Lampard, basically. And I think last season as well, I think he steered us through all that was going on off the pitch a lot better than most managers would have done. I think almost a lot of them would have just like binned it off and possibly even like thrown in the towel after we were with that deduction. But as I touched on before, he managed to put together a really good run of results, which ultimately kept us up pretty comfortably. And like I say, yeah, it's to say it's definitely the case that, as you say, like there's just a too large proportion of the fan base that will just never take to him, no matter what he does, really. And as you say, I think just based on that alone, I don't think it can really continue after next summer. That said, I still think there's too many people that think as soon as these new owners get in, everything's going to be fine again, and that's really not the case. We're still very much in a perilous position here, and if it was me, I'd be sticking with the safe option at least until the summer. And as you say, if someone great came along who was available, like in the December period or whatever where we're looking at, then yeah, maybe you take the hit. But if it is just someone like Moyes, I think that'd be such an uninspiring appointment for a large proportion of the fans who are fed up with him and can't forgive him for what he did when he left for United or whatever. And as you say, I think he'd more than keep us up as well. But I don't really think there's any future there. And if you're getting in a manager who you have better confidence in to keep us up this season, then I don't really see the point. I'd just stick with Dyche because I still think
Yeah.
he'll be able to keep us up. So yeah, I completely agree in that, let his contract run out and is probably the best for all parties. And I'd like to think that in a few years, a lot of fans at the moment who are very angry with him will be able to just look back a little bit and recognise that he probably did a better job than most people are giving him credit for, but it was just the right decision for all parties to cut ties with him. I'm just hoping that the new owners will come in and have this similar sort of rational viewpoint, but based on what I'm seeing at Roma at the moment, I'm not so sure. And if we make an appointment like the Ranieri one they've just made, it's really uninspiring, and it sends off, I think, the really wrong message for what was meant
Uh,
to be a new dawn for us.
yeah, uh, unless things go dramatically badly, unless, as you say, we fall into the bottom three and we're there for weeks and weeks, months and months, we go on some awful run where we don't win in like 7 or 8, 9 games and we're getting beat week after week and the goals are flying in. I just don't think there's any appetite for these owners to come in and sack Dyche, because I know they've gone through managers at Roma, but there's such chaos going on over there. I think the last thing they want is to take on even more chaos with Everton when they get the foot in the door. They want to just leave Everton as they are for a couple of months while they maybe get their house in order over in Italy. And then maybe in the summer, they can pick Everton up and really give it the full attention. I think right now they just want to get the deal over the line, and then they'll just kind of take a step back and think, okay, we'll just let the land lie for a little bit and we'll come back to Everton in the summer when we've actually got time to think things through and make sensible decisions. So just going back to Dyche, he's just an enigma. of a manager for me, because we talk about, oh yeah, he did put keepers up when a lot of our managers wouldn't, and I'll always respect him for that, because I thought that season when he came in the January when Lampard went, um, I thought that was it. I was convinced Everton had gone. I really had. Even when he won that first game against Arsenal, who were top of the league and flying, I still thought, no, we brought him in too late here. There's just too much left to do. And by hook or by crook, he somehow kept us up. I know it was a close run thing, but he did it, and a lot of other managers wouldn't. And he did get us to 48 points last season, whether people like him or don't like him. And it was nothing to do with him that the points deductions happened. There was no way, shape, or form you could blame him. As far as I'm concerned, he finished Everton on 48 points, and that for his first full season was a very good return. But he did put on, and as I said, he put on these weird runs where we won 4 games after the deduction, and then we finished the season very strong, didn't we? We beat Liverpool, we beat Forest. I think we beat someone else on that run. We won like another 3-4 games on the spin, big games, the ones that pushed us well and truly away from the chasing pack. So, but in between those 2 runs of form, we went like 2.5, 3 months without winning a single game. We didn't win, I think, between Burnley away and Burnley at home.
Mm.
Did we? And Burnley at home, I think, was in March.
At the start of April, I think it was. So I think
start of April, was it? Yeah,
January,
and I
February,
know
and March. I don't think we won a single game. That was the first game in 2024. We won in April.
I know ultimately we finished on 48 points, as I said, but no Everton manager should be going 3 full months without winning a game and not have any fans questioning them and thinking, I don't really think this fella's the right option here, at least not for the long term. You just can't do that for all the likes of even managers who are really well thought of in football. If they went on runs like that at smaller clubs than Everton, they'd probably get sacked. So I'm not saying it was the right decision that we didn't sack Dyche at the time last season. I know people were calling for it then, but it also, as takes me back to your point before, to me, it opened my eyes to the fact that Sean Dyche is very limited as a manager. Sean Dyche will not keep runs of form going. He might have a run of form that lasts 3 or 4 games. He won't go on a run of form which lasts 10 games or more, like other managers have done at other clubs. And that's the type of manager who ultimately we want if we want to achieve the things that we're looking to achieve once we're in that new stadium. I know it's not going to happen overnight, but you've got to start somewhere. So it's one of those. If Dyche's contract lasted until next summer, if it expired in 2026, for example, then I wouldn't part with him in this summer. I'd keep him on for that extra year to get us into the stadium. But the fact that it's going to expire this summer, I don't think he merits a 2-3 year extension, because he's not going to take a 1 year extension, surely not. He'll want more than that, and any manager worth the salt is not going to take a 1 year offer at a club that he's already been managing for a couple of years. He'll just find that insulting. So if he's going to keep Sean Dyche around, we'd have to give him a contract for 2 or 3 years. And what's the point in doing that when we only really want him for 1 year, and then we'll have to pay him off? So it just seems like the decision's getting made for us. We're going to have to part with him this summer, or we're going to have to stick with him for the long term. And ultimately, I think most fans, and probably the new owners, and probably the players as well, to a point, would rather just work with a new manager, probably earlier than expected, rather than just stick with a manager who they know is not going to really take them anywhere in the long term. So, yeah, he's not going to go anywhere, I don't think, for the end of the season, because the Friedkins are just got other things on their plate at the moment. But I think he's shown us enough over the time he's been here that while he could do a job and he's got a place in the Premier League, as I said, he will find work again after Everton at another, sort of solid club. Bit of someone to come in and just fix a few messes and get them back on the straight and narrow. I think there'll always be a place for a manager like that, and Dyche will do okay. But if you're talking about getting back in the top half and at some point getting back into Europe and maybe having runs in cups again, Sean Dyche is not your man, and that's what Everton's looking for once we're in that new stadium over the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's definitely the best option for all parties, just to cut our losses in the summer. So yeah, so we've been looking ahead about the Dyche, but back in the here and now, obviously, game coming up on Saturday. It's like I say, as we touched on, it's like the last game of this sort of like nicer run of fixtures before it starts to get really tough in December. Obviously Brentford are doing quite well, to be fair. I think probably defying quite a few expectations based on how they did last season. I was one who was tipping them to maybe struggle a bit and maybe be fighting relegation, but to be fair to Thomas Frank, he's really sorted things around there, and they're in the top half and free scoring, to be fair to them. So it's definitely not going to be an easy match. Obviously, our record against them at Goodison has been quite good over the last few seasons, but with the situation the club's in at the moment, is it too early to be calling it a must win? I know people like to chuck this phrase
No,
around all the time, but yeah, with the run of fixtures coming up, we need to start getting points on the boards in games like this, I'd say.
no, it's not too early to answer your question. For me, it absolutely is a must win because if we are Brentford are in the top half of the table, but it's still early doors. Isn't their away form this season not great? I don't think they've won a game away, have they? Unless they won one just before the break.
Mm,
They've done very well at home. They've
yeah,
got a crazy record of scoring in the first minute, haven't they? I think they've
yeah.
won a lot of home games, but I think they haven't done too well away. I think they've lost if most games and maybe drawn one or two. I haven't got it in front of me, but we've played well at home. As I said, we've not won all our home games other than the Fulham game. I can't think of, and maybe Brighton on the first day, but against Brighton we were down to 10 men. Those circumstances, but other than the Fulham game, I can't think of a game at Goodison this season where I've seen us play really, really poor. We played really well against Bournemouth, and we played really well against. Have we played Newcastle? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
at home. Okay, yeah, I thought we held our own against Newcastle. We could have won. We probably could have won that on another night if we'd have got the penalty that we should have
Mhm.
got. Calvert-Lewin getting fouled. So obviously we played well for 90 minutes against Bournemouth and then somehow lost that game. So it just seems like the performances are there at home for the most part. It's just we just maybe lacked a bit of luck and we've lacked a bit of concentration, and maybe the manager's made one or two mistakes with his substitutions in the home games when the game's there to be won, and he hasn't pushed the boat out enough. So a lot of people like Thomas Frank as the next Everton manager. Now, personally, I don't, because I think he's another manager like Dyche, where although he does put good runs of form together, we also see his teams have really poor runs of form. I just think really top level managers or managers who you think are probably going to who are quite young and you think could get to top level, you don't really see their teams being as topsy turvy as the likes of Dyche and Thomas Franks is. But I think we've got the players to beat Brentford because, as you said, they've got no Ivan Toney, they've got no big anymore, they've got no big goal threat. Um, we've got most of our players back fit now. I don't. Brozier's I think back training with the first team. He's not going to start, but he'll probably be fit enough to be involved at some point. You've got Beto, I know a lot of fans don't rate, but Beto looks like he's chomping at the bit at the moment. He's got a couple of goals. He had one goal that was very harshly took off him against Southampton. So it looks like when he gets in the team, he's taking his chances now that if they get made for him. You've got Calvert-Lewin, who I think just needs a goal to kind of get set on his way. Now it's another video what happens with Calvert-Lewin long term and whether you'd be playing him over the other striking options. But I do think Calvert-Lewin is at some point soon is going to start bagging a couple of goals here and there because he works hard enough to get the goals. And you've also got other players like your McNeils who chip in as well. And who else am I thinking of? It's gone out of my head. But we've got enough firepower, is what I'm trying to say, to beat Brentford. We just need to keep things tight at the back. And if Jared Branthwaite's back fit, we should be tight enough. Because going over old grounds again, we are not as good a team when we start with Michael Keane. And I don't want to sound like I'm picking on him because even in games where he's not obviously at fault and he doesn't do anything wrong, the fact of the matter is when Jared Branthwaite's in the team over him, it allows the Everton team to be more settled and to play further up the pitch because we've got the recovery pace to get back. So we have to sit deeper when we play Keane and Tarkowski as a partnership. And when we sit deeper, that doesn't suit Everton's way of playing because Calvert-Lewin just gets isolated and going off the headers with no one to help him. And yeah, McNeil's, I don't think, moves the ball fast enough as a number 10 when he plays behind him. When he still has, he can do well as a number 10, but just not as a number 10 when we're going to sit deep. And you've got your Lindströms, who's not kicked on at all, really. You've got your Harrison, who's just an out-and-out winger, doesn't really cut in and get involved in the goals, does he? So it's not like he can get forward and support Calvert-Lewin. So when Everton sit deep, I think they're asking for trouble. And I just really hope we don't sit deep against Brentford, because I think Brentford are one of those teams where we could knock them out early. If we get a goal in the first 10, 15 minutes, I could see us gaining confidence, the crowd getting lifted, the fans getting behind the players playing with more confidence. And if we can go 2-0 up in the game, which I think we're very well capable of, I think that this would be a game that we've got in the bag. essentially. The worst thing we can do is just knock it round and not take any risks and just bore the fans to death and wait for and let Brentford just suck the life out of the game and get a dodgy one on the break, and then all of a sudden you get toxic Goodison again, don't you? So it's an absolute must win, because we don't win this, then I think we could end the weekend in the bottom three. How many points are we above the bottom three now? Two.
Yeah, it's not many, definitely.
Yeah, we're on 10, and Ipswich won, didn't they, just before the break? They
Yeah,
won their first one, I think. So they're on 7 or 8 now.
yeah, and obviously you got Palace as well. Who could catch us if they win as well. I'm not sure if they've got this weekend, but yeah, could very easily be in the bottom three, definitely.
We could very easily be in the bottom three, and going into the bottom three with this run of fixtures we've gotten, then oh my word, then it really is worrying times. So we need to get this we get this 3 points in the bag, then it will buy us a little bit of breathing space. It's not the end of the world if we go on and lose a couple of games after that. If we can get to the end of December and we're on maybe 17, 18 points, then you'd still fancy us to get enough points over the second half of the season, wouldn't you? But if we're going into late December, early January with, I don't know, 11, 12 points, then that's when you start to think we're really in danger of getting fallen behind here, and we're really in danger of getting stuck down there. So we just need to get some points on the board as fast as possible, and this is probably going to be the best chance we've got to do that for a good while, because I think Brentford are limited in how they can hurt us, and we've got the players who, if they just get set up the right way, can definitely do damage to Brentford.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. I think we've maybe seen a couple of times this season where we afford teams a little too much respect, particularly at Goodison. I think back to Fulham in particular. And obviously Fulham have had a very good season, but I think we made them look a lot better than they actually really are. Afforded them far too much respect, and it was only once we, put the impetus on them towards the end that we managed to get that goal. And I completely agree. I think if we go into Brentford with like a positive mindset, and as you say, in the first 20 minutes, just kind of get on top of them a bit, even if you don't score, but you get the confidence going in the crowd a bit. I think that really could definitely make a difference. And yeah, like I say, it's looking like Brentford and McNeil are both thinking looking like they're going to be able to start, which again I think is definitely a big boost. As you say, um, like I say, it's not singling out Keane, because I'd actually probably argue his level of performances have probably been higher than Tarkowski's this season. But Tarkowski's the captain, and he plays better next to Brantford than Keane does. But as you say, when them two are together, I completely agree. It limits us, and we still sometimes try and play that way, in that nicking the ball's hard to fill. But as you say, if it doesn't work out, we're going to get caught in behind, because they're just not quick enough to get back. So yeah, like I say, Brantford coming back in really, really sorts us out. And with him being kind of in and out the team the last few games, you can already see, I think, the difference it's making to us defensively. So yeah, it would definitely be a massive boost for us. And then as you say, I still think there's a little bit of a player in Lindstrom. I'm still a little bit encouraged by. Because like when he came off against Palace, I didn't see too much made about this, but he came off against Palace at half time after losing the ball and literally like throwing a strop right in front of Dyche. It was on that side of the pitch, by the main stand, right in front of Dyche, and clearly just throwing a bit of a tantrum about like out of frustration, and he got hooked. And I was honestly just thought, well, that's it then. He's going to be another Danjuma. We'll barely see him again for the rest of the season. But he's clearly worked his way back into the side, and has started the last few. And it's not he's not been great, but there's little glimpses, and I genuinely think he offers us more than Harrison does in that right position. So I'd like to see him starting again, and as you say, maybe in similar circumstances to Calvert-Lewin, if he just maybe gets a goal, or has a really good game in which he like, gets a good assist or something, and really helps contribute to the victory, then maybe his confidence will start to get going as well, and he can prove to be an important player for us as well. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one to
I'll
consider.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you one thing I do like about Lindstrom. I know the performances haven't been there yet, but I think it was after the Southampton game where he came out. He came out on his Instagram. He basically just held his hands up and said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, that wasn't good enough. The team wasn't good enough. I haven't been good enough." There was none of this. Oh, we go again next week. Stick together, Blues. Yeah, all this rallying cry nonsense that it just seems like our players have been doing for years and years and years. Just all these words and no action. It's refreshing just to see an Everton player hold his hands up for once and say, "Yeah, I accept. I'm sorry. That was not acceptable. I need to be better, and I'm going to really, really try to be better." Rather than just either running away into a hole and not saying anything, or trying to engage with the fans and issue these, as I said, stupid rallying cries. So I do like that from Lindstrom, and the fact that he seems to be his own biggest critic. So he's someone who, when he doesn't perform, will hold his hands up and admit it, and he doesn't seems like he's the type who might call out other players when they're not performing. So yeah, if it's just long, he's going to have most important thing is he's going to need to start putting the performances out on the pitch, because he's not really in the position to be pointing fingers if he's carries on playing as badly as he has done. But it is encouraging that he seems to have an attitude that is not typical of the type of an Everton player, and that's something that I think is good, because a lot of the attitudes of Everton players over the last few years, even maybe going back a lot of years, just seems like when players get to Everton, they just get too comfortable and they don't seem to take it as seriously as they should do. And having someone come in who's been here 5 minutes, hopefully rubs off on everyone else when he's got that type of attitude where it's, no, we should be better. We're better than this. We should be doing better. We shouldn't be accepting this, or we should be absolutely fuming when we don't win. So yeah, I'll say that for him. But as you said, hopefully he can put the performances in. He just needs something to click for him.
Yeah. So yeah, with all that in mind, what is your score prediction for Saturday?
If Gareth Brantwaite starts, I'll go with a 2-0 to Everton. If Michael Keane starts, I'll go with a 2-1 to Everton. I'm confident we'll win, but I'm just not confident of the clean sheet without Brantwaite. I really hope that we win. If we can go maybe 2-0 up, then as I said earlier on, I'm convinced that we'll see the game out this time, that Brentford will just, pack up for the day. And I don't want to upset anyone when I say that. I'm not trying to say like Brentford are just stroppers who don't have any heart, but I just think the way Everton set up when we're ahead, I think we've learned from that Bournemouth game, and we know, and hopefully the manager's learned from that Bournemouth game to just not be reckless with the substitutions, not to just throw the shape out the window because he wants to give certain players a couple of minutes, because that's what he did against Bournemouth. He went 2-0 up and he brought Beto on to just give him a little run arounds because he hadn't played much, and we lost all shape doing that and couldn't get up the pitch. I don't think Dyche is going to do that again. So, and it happened the Aston Villa one was different. I think in the second half, Aston Villa just played out of their skin and deserved that 3-2 victory. It was disappointing from an Everton point of view, but it wasn't like we threw it away. I just think the Aston Villa came back and there was nothing we could do because they were a quality side and they're much better than us. But if Everton can get 2-0 up in this game, then I'm confident we're going to win. But if it's maybe 0-0 or it's only 1-0 and we're going into like the final 10 minutes, that's when you start to get nervous, isn't it? So I'm just hoping that Everton can make this comfortable and can, as you said, be positive early doors, get the fans involved, get some touches in the opposition box, make their goalkeeper work a little bit, and just make everyone believe that it's going to be a good day, because it could so easily be a good day. We're good enough to beat Brentford. We're at Goodison Park. They're good enough to beat us as well, definitely. But we're at home, and we've been playing well at home, and they haven't been playing well away. We should be winning this. So yeah, my score prediction is an Everton win. It's just dependent on the centre back pair and whether we get the clean sheet or not.
Right. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I think I'll probably stick with I'd say probably a 1-0 as well. Maybe, just get it over the line, early goal, and hold on to the lead, show, the kind of defensive stability that I think we've seen a little bit more of in the last few games, hopefully. That hopefully Bramford will provide if he starts. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums everything up. So thank you very much for joining me, Paul. It's always great to get a bit of a rational view. There's so much negativity online nowadays, particularly when it comes to Everton. So getting a much more level-headed view is I think a lot of people will find very refreshing.
Hopefully so, mate. Hopefully so. As I said, it's Everton. We don't do, and I'm guilty as this as well. We just can't do rationality most of the time, Everton fans. And can we really be blamed? We just support a weird club, that just seems at times dead set on harming itself, or it just seems that God above just doesn't want to do well, because the amount of bad luck that we suffer from and farcical things that go against us, whether it's just the Premier League making up rules as they go along just to fine us, and then not doing the same thing to other clubs, or whether it's I could be here all night going on a rant like that. But yeah, hopefully if we can get the win and we can calm everyone down a little bit and just send people into work on Monday feeling happy. It's miserable when you're an Evertonian and we're not doing well, and you're going into work and you with people who support other clubs like Man City or Liverpool, and their teams are doing really well. Or even Man United, I know they're in a state at the minute, but at least they've got a new manager and a new owners, and they've got maybe a bit of positivity that things are going to get better soon. Whereas it just feels like Everton, just feels like we've been just handcuffed to a tree and left there, doesn't it? It just seems like no matter how much patience we have, it will never ever get better.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just hopefully good times are ahead because bloody hell have we waited long enough.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree. And yeah, so on that note, yeah, please leave a like if you enjoyed. Comment below giving your thoughts looking ahead to the Brentford game, and of course on the Sean Dyche situation. Subscribe to the Toffee Blues channel for more Everton content, and we will see you in the next video. Up the Toffees.